The Engineer and the Dwarfs, Part 2. German folk tale. It had an instantaneous effect on the dwarfs, who stood still at once. "But you are one of the bad men who are building the tunnel," they cried out. "Aha, we can spoil your little game, my good fellow, we can smash you and your snorting old dragon who is coming here to devour us, into pieces, we can throw rocks on the line, aha! We have often watched you though you were not aware of our presence," said the chairman. "We had just called a committee meeting to decide what is to be done about this matter of the tunnel. Now you know it is all nonsense about the dragon," said Carl persuasively, as if he were talking to children. "You have heard of trains, haven't you? You are not so behind the times as all that." "Some of us have seen the dragon and even ridden in him," said Mr. Chairman. "There is a famous story about that, but the majority still look upon the railway with suspicion and even distrust. We only ask to be let alone, and not be interfered with by meddling mortals," he said in a gruff voice. "What do we need with you? Our civilization and our history are more ancient even than that of India or Egypt, and from us the human race is descended." "I tell you what," said Carl, "I could put you up to a thing or two for all that. We live in modern Europe, you know, and not in ancient Egypt. Now, for instance, why is this beautiful hall, a perfect work of art in its way, so badly illuminated?" "Badly illuminated? Why, what do you mean?" cried the little men indignantly. "Do you not see our glowworms hanging in festoons on the walls?" "Oh, I say, glowworms! In the 20th century, that's rather strong, you know. What you want, is electric light." "What's that?" said the dwarfs curiously. "You have only to press a little button on the wall, like this." He pressed his thumb on the wall and the whole place is lit up almost as if it were day. "We don't believe it, we don't believe it," said the little men. "But it's true, I assure you, Christmas tree," said Carl. "Wouldn't it make our eyes blink?" said one thin little fellow. Carl noticed that the dwarfs' eyes were small and their faces pale. Most of them had quite white beards and hair. "That comes of living so long underground, it is a loss of pigment," thought Carl, "like a geranium that has been kept in the cellar." "Now I could fix it up for you," said the young engineer, always keenly on the lookout for a job. "We are going to have it laid on in the tunnel." "How much would it cost?" inquired the dwarfs. "Oh, £1,000 or so," said Carl carelessly. He had heard that dwarfs were very rich, and he was a good man of business, and had his eyes open to his interests. "That's a great deal of money, a great deal of money," said the little men in chorus. "Oh, as for that I am sure we could come to an agreement," said Carl. "By the way," he went on, "do you happen to have a telephone here? I should like to phone to a friend of mine and tell him where I am, it would be such a joke." "What's a telephone?" asked the dwarfs. "You don't know what a telephone is, Himmel! You are old fashioned down here, you are only half civilized." "Half civilized, half civilized," repeated the dwarfs angrily. "Let us repeat our civilization." "I'll tell you what a telephone is," said Carl, interrupting this burst of eloquence. "It is a little tube connected with a wire, you put one part of it to your ear, and then you put your mouth to the tube and say, 'No, 1280, and then listen, and your friend will speak to you from miles and miles away, and you can answer him.'" "We don't believe it, we don't believe it," said the unbelieving dwarfs. "It's true for all that, Christmas tree," said Carl. "I could fix that up for you too, if you have any connection with the outer air. You must have," he continued, sniffing, "for the air is nice and fresh here, quite different to that in the tunnel. Have you a ventilating shaft?" "Oh yes," said the little men, "we can show you that," and they led him out of the hall. In the passage outside was a great cleft or crevice in the rocks, such as we call in England a chine. Above it the moon shone full and bright, a waterfall rushed down on one side. He saw ferns and dear little plants leaning over the water, growing between the cracks of the rocks. There were also glowworms cunningly arranged in groups that looked like fairy stars. On the other side, he observed to his joy rough steps leading upwards cut in the solid rock. He sighed a sigh of relief. Here at least was the way out. He regarded the pretty sight with the eye of the professional engineer, rather than that of the artist. "That must be a stiff climb for you little men up there," he said. Now if you had a lift. What's that? Asked the dwarfs eagerly. It's a little room that goes up and down when you pull a wire rope. We don't believe it, said the skeptical gnomes again. It's true nevertheless. Now wouldn't it be fun to have a ride in it? I could fix that up too, you know, if you gave me time and helped a bit yourselves, said Carl. Really, you poor things, he went on, you do not seem to have heard much of modern technical progress down here in this rabbit burrow. I beg your pardon, I'm sure, as they looked displeased again. Now I am really curious to know, have you heard of Zeppelin? Zeppelin, no! Is he the king of Germany? Said the dwarf who had been in the chair. Ha? Ha! King of Germany, well, he is nearly, in some people's eyes, said Carl. He has built an airship, it is the most wonderful of all new inventions, it floats in the air like a boat does in the water. Close by it passes, by soft breezes fanned. Like a great steamboat straight from fairyland. He went on in an enthusiastic way, you can go for a ride in it any day in Frankfurt, providing the weather is fine and you can afford to pay 15. Just listen to him, said the dwarfs. We don't believe a word you have said, you are imposing on our credulity, you bad man, and thereupon they flew at him and began to beat him with their clubs, which were heavily weighted, and to pinch him with their long fingers. It might have gone hardly with him, but quick as thought Carl flashed out the little revolver from his pocket. They seemed to know the meaning of that modern toy, for they crouched back trembling, and not daring to move. Now stop it, will you, he said, or I shall have to shoot you, and take you home with me to be stuffed or put into the National Anthropological Museum. They would give me a good price for you, he said musingly. They would think you were the missing link. Oh please, Mr. Hammerstein, don't shoot us. However did the little chaps find out my name, thought Carl, we will believe all you say, even if it seems the greatest nonsense to us. After all, birds fly, bats fly and fairies fly, why should not ships and trains fly, said the spokesman, who, I must tell you, was a relation of King Reinhold in the Taunus Mountains and was proud of belonging to a royal family. Carl called him Mr. Query, because he was so fond of asking questions, but so slow to take in a new fact, as indeed were all the dwarfs. You promised us Christmas tree not to harm us, said Mr. Query, reproachfully. Well, I didn't hurt anyone, did I? But how about your treatment of me? That wasn't in the contract either, said Carl. Meanwhile Carl looked about him curiously. He had never been to Dwarfland before, and might never have the chance of visiting it again, and he did not wish to lose the opportunity of seeing all he could. Are there any more of you? He asked the dwarfs. I should think so, they answered, hundreds and thousands of us live under this mountain. To be continued.